Good day, ladies and gentlemen. Today I would like to introduce my presentation entitled The Challenges and Needs of Nurse English Communication Case Study in Taipei Hospital in Taiwan. From the introduction part, as we can see together from the Taiwan Ministry of Transportation and Communications, there are so many countries coming to Taiwan, and you can see the number 4 is from the USA. USA itself is one of the English-speaking countries, and we can say that it's one of the non-mainland China. USA continues to grow in Taiwan. It's from the 2.9 million growing up become 3.6 million years by years. So I can say that with the increasing number of the foreign people in Taiwan, it will emerge international patients. English language medical services are growing along with globalization in Taiwan. It's not surprising us. At Ministry of Health and Welfare, there are around 22,000 hospital and clinic in Taiwan, and 78 of its hospital and clinic caters to medical services, especially for the international patients. And it will be increasing the following years. And approximately around 2,700 patients from around the world in Taiwan are admitted to the hospital outpatient department each day, and all of these patients use English as their main mode of communication with hospital staff in Taiwan. All doctors use medical terminology in English to communication with other healthcare professionals. These practices create institutional pressure, especially for nurses in Taiwan, to understand medical reports, chart laboratory reports in English, and they have to use it to communicate with not only with doctors but also with another healthcare staff in their workplace. Even they could communicate in their shared native language, Chinese, Cantonese, Hakka. The usage of English is significant for them, especially for nurses in their work as the occasional demands. So that's why good English communication skill is very important for nurses in Taiwan. Nurses in Taiwan itself are not required to study English for as many years as doctors. And communication is more difficult when patient and cultural values and languages are different. And nurses graduate students are expected to read textbook, research topic, published in international journal, and everything in English. So, lack of proficiency in English is considered a major barrier to career advancement in nursing. Hence, there could be a problem for nurses in Taiwan when communicating in English with foreign patients. This is the purpose of my study. I would like to explore more about the English communication challenges faced by nurses, and I would like to identify the English communication needs faced by them. There is a question I will mention in the result part. And the gaps, what we already know. Most published research only involve English for academic needs of medical students, as we can see. As you can say that it's only focused with English for specific purposes. And this study, my study will add little research investigate nurse and foreign patient relationship has not yet reached much attention. As long as I know that hospital in Taiwan, not only in Taiwan but also in my country, Indonesia, have seldom monitored and recorded any information about nurses' English proficiency and what kind of English problem they have encountered. Interesting review. There are so many my party from the previous study, and you can see from the Young and Su that most of the participants were read communicating with foreign patient is the most needed, and speaking is the most important skill. And all nurses from all their study have difficulty understand the accent, pronunciation, and slang from the foreign patients. And most of the participant nurses, they use a lot of medical terminology, but didn't know how to explain in English to the foreign patient. And most of the participants, they often use code switching. Code switching itself is they have to use one or two languages interchangeably to the foreign patients. And IELTS and TOEFL cannot guarantee the actual ability of nurses to communicate well. And this is the serious one from the Adams from BBC News. Re-examined the language proficiency of the nurses after the death of patient in 2008, caused by the German doctor who was not proficient in English. It's a very serious one. And job satisfaction, routine-centered care, and a lack of trust, overload of work and emergency of patient is become the major barrier to achieving effective communication between nurses and foreign patients. The result of the previous study have shown that nurses have been trained to establish an effective communication. However, nurses do not use this skill to interact with their patient in clinical environments. And this my methodology. My methodology is consists of 21 Taiwanese nurses, 18 female and only 3 male nurses. and most of them range from the 30 to 40 years old, and years of working 1 to 5 years. They are a participant, and similar with the 6 to 10 years a participant also. And from the questionnaire itself is divided into 4 parts. The first part about the background information, second part English language abilities, is divided into 2 parts also. The first part is about how they rate their English skill and what English skill they would like to improve in their, maybe for their future career. And the second part of my questionnaire is frequency of English speaking skill are used at work. And the last part of my questionnaire is problems in spoken English communications. This is a participant of observation. When I was staying in hospital to accompany my wife because she had childbirth in the hospital, I record and observe many nurses in the hospital from the pediatric ward and maternity ward. Most of the nurses are female. As you can see the timetable here, the length of recordings. And from the analysis and findings, like I just mentioned before in the previous slide, most of the participants are female. There are 18 participants, and most of the age is 30 to 40, and self-rated English proficiency, most of the participants were rated average. In the second part of the questionnaire is about the participants' self-rating of their English language skill, and most of the participants were rated speaking skill were poor in their speaking skill. As only 7 participants out of the 21 participants were rated poor in their speaking skill. I can say that nurses need to productive skills, speaking more than other skills in the professional setting while interacting with foreign patients. And the second section, in the second part of the questionnaire, English language skill participants want to improve. As you can see together from the speaking skill and grammar skill is give priority. It means they want to improve this skill in their future career or their present occupations. As we can see, the 10 participants out of the 21 participants will rate grammar skill priority or very much, and also for the speaking skill. And the third part of the questionnaire is about the frequency of English speaking skill used at work, and there are 8 items and divided into 4 by the Likert scale of frequency, often, sometimes, rarely, and never. And we can see together that the first rank goes to the number 1 about the inquiry about foreign patients' symptoms and needs. And most of the participants, 14 participants, were rarely to use English in their workplace. And the second rank goes to the number 3, making general conversation with foreign patients, 12 participants. And third rank goes to the number 5, describing and talking about pain with the foreign patients. And the fourth rank goes to the number 6 items, giving instruction and health education about the disease of the foreign patients. And most participants reveal they rarely to use English in their workplace, with the case to give information and inform them of the nursing care. And this is the last section of my questionnaire, is about the problems in spoken English communication. As you can see together, the most problematic areas in speaking entities, as you can see, the first rank, it goes to the number 10. I lack confidence in speaking to foreign patients and that speak too fast. Yeah, the respondent were agree with that statement. And the second rank goes to the number 12. I lack confidence in voicing out my opinions in English to the foreign patients. There are 15 participants. And this is I recorded so many videos when I was staying in hospital. And the first, they often use a gesture or body movement to aid communication with the foreign patient. As you can see together, the conversation, you must open your seat and go to the restroom. You can click blah blah blah. It means that the nurse use a gesture like this. You have to shape it. So it means that they often use the gesture to aid communication to the foreign patients. And the second conversation that I have found in my data. What is your first time of menstrual meant? Excuse me, menstrual? Yes, menstrual. Because the nurse didn't have ability to explain more about the definition of the menstrual in English. They didn't have to. They lack of proficiency or they lack of knowledge about the meaning of menstrual, or they're difficult to find appropriate or correct word in English. So they only showing the medical terms to the foreign patients. And you can see together in another example is how many your head. The nurse is often use a body gesture. For example, like this, it means that how many your head. Like this, yeah. And another example is what kinds of applicable disease of my baby. There are so many factors, right? It's a common disease for Taiwanese baby. Yeah. The nurse replied that you can check it to the website. I can explain you because it's hard for me to explain the English. So that's why I have to check by myself with my wife in the website because the nurse is difficult to explain more about what kind of disease of my baby in Taiwan and about my baby. Another example is, Mom, you have to take this pill. It's painkiller. What is the name of this pills, nurse? And the nurse said this. I don't know, ma'am. This is from doctor. I'll ask him later. Okay, I will be waiting. They didn't know how to explain this medicine because there are so many medicine before the patient have to consume it. But the patient curious about the function of these pills. And the result of my discussions, the first question is how do Taiwanese nurses and international patients communicate with each other? As I just mentioned before, they often use a gesture, they're not able to engage in small talk and maintain long conversation, they influence their mother tongue or code switching, and difficulty explaining medication and medical procedures. And the second question is about what are the challenges faced. As you can see together from the questionnaire, there are four most problematic areas. The first one is goes to the they lack confidence in speaking to foreign patients that speak too fast. A similar finding with the previous study. And the third question, what English communication skills are needed? Most of them were read, speaking, and grammar. And for discussion, nurses need time to think before they reply in English. Most of the participants will agree with the statement. And their lack of confidence is consistent with the previous finding. And this is inappropriate with the previous finding, which they rarely to use information or instruction in English procedure from the doctor to the foreign patient. I'm sorry, this is the last presentation. For the limitation of my study, because only 21 Taiwanese nurses for the questionnaire and ethical issue, I was not able to distribute personally questionnaire to nurse by nurse. A suggestion for the research, nurse and hospital should provide training for the new nursing graduates working in the hospital at the same time reminding the senior nurses what is expected of them at work. And maybe they need a translator. And for the nurses, more emphasis should be given to improving the English speaking skill. And the further research, interviewing doctors and specialists will further help in investigating English language challenges among the nurses. And for the further research, will be focused with the specific units, maybe for the pediatric unit or only with maternity unit. Okay, thank you very much for listening. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Awang. We will now move into a Q&A session.
Any questions so far?
I don't have a question, I just have comments. I really like the topic of this study because this study is really timely. I think this is really necessary in the context of Taiwan. As you said, there's so many foreign residents now, and yeah, I feel this is really necessary, and the study really needed. But I also agree this is an ethical issue, as you said, that you mentioned included in the limitations, one of your limitations. And so this is a comment and also suggestions. I think this is maybe something need to be done. I mean, maybe there's something should be supported by the universities, and maybe there's a projects, to be arranged, maybe by the universities and a hospital. And I think hospital may require such kind of help. Yeah. And this is one of the comments. And the other comment is about the findings that you suggest. That instead of I remember one of the suggestions that you make that the nurse they need to improve speaking and grammar. I think in order to help them to improve their English, to fulfill their, to satisfy their performance, I mean in their work performance, I think we need to help them to identify their communication needs. I mean, in terms of their function, communication function. For example, as you said, they need to explain how to spell out the name of the medicine. Yeah, that kind of things. Yeah, rather than grammar, or yeah, that kind of thing, or pronunciation for a simple word like height instead of hate, that kind of thing. Yeah. So just 2 comments. Yeah, but I do agree with you. This is very meaningful study. Yeah, and I think this needs to be done. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, please.
I do agree with Dr. Wu. It is a meaningful and interesting study. And I also want to echo Dr. Wu's comments about in your questionnaire, there seems to be a focus on their linguistic problem, like pronunciation and grammar. But I think if your focus is on communication, maybe there could be more situated questions related to their workplace, or there are studies related to people's use of communication strategies. So, like, what are different communication strategies are available? Maybe that would fit the purpose of your study better.
Thank you very much for your suggestion to my study, and I will do it maybe for the further research.
So I just have one small suggestion. I think the performance in terms of the oral communication aspect of those nurses probably had a lot to do with the expectations from their employers, which means the hospitals. So in other words, echoing with the other 2 professors, if that's not part of the work expectations from the hospital, and it's not included as part of their job requirements, or as well as any kind of protocol, for example, for the service per se, they probably wouldn't trouble themselves in terms of extra learning, right, or self-study. So I think that's one of the things I want to remind you. And also, second thing is that because in the abstract, also in your presentation, I didn't get the information regarding where the observation site is located, like whether that's a big city, whether that's like, yeah. So I mean, because there's a big difference between the needs to serve urban people or patients versus countryside. So, and also the size of the hospital or the medical facilities also matters. So those are just for your references if you can. But yeah, okay. Thank you. Great study, by the way. I like that.
Thank you, professors. Let's give another round of applause.